Oh man, have I been have I been talking for a half an hour here, and I have 52 people waiting, and the entire time I have been talking to myself? Well, isn't that funny? Let's just see. Well, that might have been a crash and burn. Have I been talking for more than 5 seconds? Or did I just start? Because I feel terrible if I only just started. Which is fine. I'll just have to roll back and we can start all over again. Yeah, I feel so. OBS is like go live in the yeah. So my bad. The go live button, I clicked it and then it didn't go live. So I thought it did. My bad. Well, what's cool is I guess I did a whole bunch of stuff already. So that saves us from some downloading work that we did. But I'll show you anyway. So thanks everybody for joining. My God, I've been talking for a half hour and just realized that I haven't been streaming, even though I pushed the start streaming buttons. Anyway, thanks all for joining me. Let's roll it back. All right, so where is my mouse cursor? Come on, mouse cursor. Where are you? I'm gonna go ahead and quit. I literally, I just went through a Windows 11 installation and everything. That's all good. All right, so let's step one it again. I want to show you folks how to download Fusion. I guess I just want to say thanks for everybody who's sat around and waited for the past 30 minutes. I'm so sorry that it didn't start on the way that it was supposed to. Lessons learned. It's been a while since I've live streamed, so yay. So now the chat is happening. Yay, huzzah. My goodness. I feel like a dumbass. Anyway. Thanks everybody for now there's still somewhat 40-ish people joining. Tell your friends, I'm actually starting now. Dumbass. Okay, so what I want to do is talk about Fusion 13, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how to download it, how to install it. I'm going to show you how to get Windows for ARM going. I'm on my M1 MacBook Pro right now. This thing's got 64 gigs of RAM, so we can throw all kinds of VMs and run them all at the same time here. And so, yeah, let's see. Yeah, there, I had this whole thing planned out and oops, well, we learned, right? So let's get back to the demo. And we're going to start just by, I'm going to clear this out. And we're going to download it. So we are currently living under the Anywhere workspace. We're in the desktop hypervisor group here, so you can find us under Fusion for Mac. Workstation, of course, is there as well. But we're going to talk about Fusion today. So our new product page, exciting. And so, you can download the product from, the download section within VMware, but you don't need to. You don't need to log in to do that. You can just get it from our trial page. It's literally the exact same binary bits that we get. And it's the same binary on Apple Silicon and on Intel. So you can just download the one and away you go. So we go to try for free. And this button right here is the same as this link down here. And what it's going to do is just automatically start downloading. So away it goes there. Now I've obviously already got it downloaded. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through another install, make sure it's quit. And there we go. All right, so check this out. New DMG. I'm very excited about this. And we've got a new product icon. Isn't that fancy? I know, right? I'm so proud of myself. So we're just going to double click. It's going to ask for a password. Sure. It'll do this initialization step real quick. And by real quick, I mean like 10, 15 seconds or something. I don't know why it needs to take this long. It's like checking all the binaries, making sure everything is signed. And then once it comes up, the UI I find takes a little bit for some reason. We're working on, you know, figuring out why it kind of hangs up at the startup. But yeah, during my last run through of this live stream, the first half hour of it, where I was just talking to myself, it took the same amount of time. So we got something we can look into. Okay, so here's our new product icon. I'm gonna move this to the middle. You can see that, isn't that fancy? Nice little white around it there. And yeah, so this is what I mean. Like it takes a little bit of time at the startup for some reason. But anyway, here we are. So we're running Fusion 13. This is our build. Exciting. And so we're gonna go through and we're gonna install Windows. I already did this a few times, so let's go ahead and just delete these. Doot. Trash. All right. So the one thing that I like to do, you know, for installing Windows, getting your copy of Windows is probably the trickiest thing, right? And if you have a license and a legit, you know, agreement with Microsoft, they're providing you with ISOs and you have a channel to get that. But for the rest of us, you might have a hard time to try and find one, because if you go to like, let's just try a Windows 11 ISO, there's like a download. Wait, that's what you want. So yeah, the ISO here. This is an x86 only ISO. It says multi-edition, but it just means multi, like enterprise, pro, home, all that stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean multiple architectures. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to use one of my favorite tools, UUP dump. This is downloading directly from the Windows Update servers, so it's, you know, as legit as it gets. And so we're going to go for the latest public release of Windows here. You can pick other ones if you want to, but this is what we're going to go with today. So, Windows 22 H2. And we can see that, you know, this is an ARM build, what it's good for. I think it's funny that that's listed on here, because Microsoft would never admit that, but here we are. So, pick your language. The editions, it's just going to be home and pro, and that's fine. If we wanted to add additional additions here, you can do that. I found it gets kind of weird and it boots funny if you add additional ones. So I handle it this way, and I have an enterprise ISO for that from work anyway. So I don't really need to create something that's not one of those two. So we will download and convert to ISO, and then from there it'll basically do all the magic for us. And so we'll say create download package. Now, I already did this. And so what it does is it downloads everything into this folder here, right? 22621. And it creates all of these files here, right? And so what we did is the first thing I did was we did chmod. So that changed it so that you're able to, you see the X here and the X here. That allows us to execute this file and run it as a script, which is what we need to do on Mac. And so doing that allows us to then run it, and running it, we just do /da. And now I'm going to cancel it because it already, you know, I already ran all of this in the first half hour of the video. And it created this folder, I should say it created this file right here. So do a long listing. We can see this is like 4 point something gigs, and here we go. So that actually saved off a whole bunch of time, because it takes, you know, 5-10 minutes, each depending on your download speed. So basically it downloads all the files, and you know, we have the history of it all happening here. It downloads all these files from Microsoft's update servers and then compiles them, builds them all into a single ISO file. So you can see it, you know, downloading everything here and then converting it, and then from the converting we create the ISO, and then, you know, stick it all inside that ISO, create it bootable, and away it goes. And so we've got that already. So what I can do is from here, we'll go File, New, and I'm just going to drag the ISO that I downloaded onto it. So where did we go? 22621. Ta-da. All right. You can see I got a lot of ISOs. So there we are. Okay. Thanks, Gaurav. Much appreciated. It's nice to know that my stream is still working. Okay. And so, yeah, there we go. I'm not going to worry about secure boot on here. This might be a little small. I hope folks can see it okay. If I change the resolution, it's probably going to mess up. So here's our, actually, let's get this out of the way. Let's get this out of the way. The encryption, so this is brand new. This is specific to Windows 11 and our new TPM. So within the Windows 11 supportability, we had to create a new trusted platform module that would be 2.0 compliant. But we wanted to do it in a way that didn't like suck from a performance perspective, right? And so we created this new mode and this new TPM to satisfy that. And so the new mode is this fast encryption. And what it does is it only encrypts the spot of the VM that holds the TPM data. And so there's some parts of that in the NVRAM, inside of the VM snapshot, the V memory itself. You know, these files, they have like this special area within them that's encrypted. Not the entire file itself, though. Or should say, not the entire virtual machine itself. So like the VMDK does not get encrypted. The old school method, everything inside of the VM would be encrypted, and there's a performance penalty when you do that. It's got to decrypt it on the fly, right? So because we're only encrypting the tiny little bit, performance doesn't seem to have, or doesn't take an impact. And so we're also going to generate the password, run that a few times, and if we want, actually, let's take one without slashes in it. You can select the password and copy it if you need to, but you can also tell it to remember inside of the keychain. And if you don't, we will let you know that if you don't save that and if you don't remember the password, you're probably going to lose that data. So if you don't have it, we'll make sure that it's remembered. Continue. And I always like to customize here, so we'll do Win 11 live stream. And so you can see it very quickly did the encryption part there. And now we have our trusted platform module and we have encryption enabled. And so what we'll do is, you know, from the get-go, we'll show you we do not have 3D accelerated graphics yet. We're getting there. And that's definitely the absolute top of our list. Not quite there yet though, but it's coming. So I'm going to give this 6 gigs of RAM, or 6 CPU cores and 16 gigs of RAM. This machine has 64 gigs of RAM, and so I got plenty to spare. I'm on a Mac Pro 16-inch M1 Max. And we're also going to increase the size of the virtual machine disk a little bit. Let's just go to 200. Cool. And that's it. Let's fire it up. All right. And we do have to click into there and click a key to trigger the installation. Otherwise, you know, bad things happen. Okay. And we're at the install here. All right. So that's happening. Let me just... Okay. So I don't have a product key. We're going to go ahead and just choose Windows 11 Pro and accept the terms. We're going to do custom. I'm going to select the disk that we just did, and this is going to run for a few minutes. And I've got to pause for 2 seconds to tell my cat to chill, so I'll be right back in 1 second. Hi, kitty. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so we're rebooting. Awesome, just in time. Let's see. Happy Friday. Can we connect to ESXi 8? It was asked. Yes, we can. So within Fusion, I don't have an ESXi 8 environment kicking right now, but we just the same way we did for all the other environments, you have file, connect to server, and here we are. You can do it actually from over here as well. I thought you could. But yeah, ESXi 8, vCenter server, and ESXi hosts, both 8. Let's see. Yeah. So Windows is now coming up. And you know, while that's going to, let's bring up my Ubuntu. Oops. So Windows, you keep doing your thing over here. Let's restore up this. So this is Ubuntu 22.10, and you can see it performs pretty darn good. And this is even like with 3D graphics enabled. So if we take a quick look, we'll see OpenGL 4.3, 8 gigs of RAM, exciting. And yeah, it's just really zippy. And so if I took terminal and we bring this up here, you can see we're using Linux 5.19. And so that is the version of the kernel and newer that has our graphics drivers like built into it. And so if we look, OpenGL, we can see that we've got OpenGL 4.3. We're using our SVGA 3D device, and yeah, and that's also using Mesa 22.2.1. We need a version of Mesa like 22.1.4 or greater, so depending on your setup. But all of the newer distributions like RHEL, Fedora 37, Debian 12, and Ubuntu 22.10 and later, they've all got that. So by default, so we're good there. And yeah, so when Tools is installed, we can also, you know, just move around and change the resolution, and it will, you know, do so accordingly. And so if we can even just go ahead and say, hey, give me 3840, 2160, your typical 4K resolution, and away we go. So we'll suspend that for a quick sec, and we'll come back here. So let's see if this works. So with Windows, there's basically two ways to finish up this installation. Let's bring you back up to the top. What we can do is either go through the installation and bypass all the networking, because out of the box, Windows 11 on ARM does not have our network drivers or our graphics drivers. And so, you know, we need to get around the network driver situation because Windows wants to activate, or at least wants to, you know, wants you to sign into your Microsoft account. And so what we're going to do is I'm actually just going to click next, and we'll get to that spot here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. See, so right here, it's like, hey, I want you to connect to a network. And we have a couple of options. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the option where we install VMware tools during the installer. And this should get us our networking and graphics drivers put into here and allow us to continue. So we're going to function shift F10, bring up the command prompt. And the D drive should have been connected. It was being funny on me earlier. Yeah, see, it doesn't want to go to the D drive now for some reason. Normally what I would do is I would CD to D, and it would, you know, take me to the D drive where I could run the ./setup.ps, the PowerShell script to install the drivers. But I don't know why. It doesn't seem to be doing that. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to bypass the network enrollment. So let me see. Make sure I get my syntax right. Yeah, so we just do OOBE/ OOBE bypass NRO. And so what that does is the out-of-box experience bypass the network enrollment. NRO, it literally stands for network enrollment, not lettered something or others. So that will restart the installer and let us get back to that stage without having to worry about the network. So this is where before it was like, hey, you have to have a network. But now we have this option here. Now this is available on Enterprise Edition by default, but like Home and Pro and the other versions don't do this by default. So you have to have that bypass NRO. And this is in our KB on how to install this stuff here. And so we'll say, okay, continue with limited setup. And then it'll want me to log in. And we'll go through the security questions here. My pet's name was Pet. My city was called City. And my childhood nickname is Nick. There, now anybody can access all of my things with my 3 security questions. And yeah, we're just going to turn all this fun stuff off. And accept. All right, so Windows is now doing its install, and we'll let that finish for a minute. Let's see what folks are doing in the chat. Okay, Evan, hey buddy, how you doing? For users that eventually migrate from Intel Max to Apple Silicon, Fusion cannot run and use prior VMs. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, so we're VMware and we virtualize. We're not an emulation company, right? And so what that means is we use the features of the CPU that are available to us, and that's just how virtualization works. The CPU vendors, you know, they make some hardware things that we use. We have some software that talks to it. That's how that works. We don't fake it out and try to make it look like a different CPU. And that there are tools and open source things that do that. And the performance is really just, we don't think there's a way to get it to a point where it's actually sort of usable in a way that, you know, we won't have a million folks calling support asking, hey, how come this thing is so slow? And so, yeah, it's a bit of a bummer, but what's nice is that Windows 11 actually has an emulator built into it. So you can run Windows 11 apps, or I should say Intel and x86 apps on the ARM version of Windows. It just, the emulation is happening inside of the VM instead of for the whole operating system itself. And so that's the same for Linux and any other OS too. So we can only run the ARM variants of these operating systems. And, you know, for Linux, it's not really a big deal. Most stuff is compiled natively for ARM 64 now, thanks to Android phones and Raspberry Pis and things like that. So, yeah. But that's a really good question because, you know, folks, a lot of the time when we were doing our tech previews are like, hey, I want to use my old Windows. Can I bring it along? The short answer is no. It's a whole different, you know, it's like trying to run an iOS on a calculator. You know, it's they're just different. What else do we have? So what's changed since the last technical preview build? A few things, a lot of bug fixes. Feature-wise, not much. Mostly a lot of bug fixes, and also operating systems got their fixes in at the same time. So, like for example, Ubuntu 22.04 was having some problems, jamming, and now that works great. But the installer itself needs to get updated. But so yeah, there was some bugs there, but those have been resolved on the canonical side. We file bugs and work with them to fix it. Same thing with Fedora. We filed some bugs with Fedora and worked back and forth on it. So. Yeah, Ben, it might have been X. In my testing it before, it was always D, so I don't know why it was being weird. But either way, we're at the desktop, and the difference is basically you sign in earlier or you don't, right? And so here, you know, we don't have networking, things aren't working, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna change that. Oh, so the D drive's already installed there, so let's just go to it. And so what we're gonna do. We're going to run PowerShell as administrator. Now it'll go to D, sure. And we're going to do // setup PS1. Oh, wait, we have to do set. Sorry, my bad. Set X. You have to set execution policy remote signed. Yes. There. Now we can do run the setup. You can see it's got VMware Tools 2.1 as the build. Should run for a quick couple seconds. Don't make a fool out of me, VMware Tools. While that's going, let's look at the chat. There are some questions at the beginning of the live stream. Yeah, let's see. Ubuntu Server 2204. Yeah, I think I mentioned that. The 2204, the installer installs an older version. And so the new installers install a version that's fixed. So you just have to, run and re-grab that. Let's see. Windows 11, it boots. Yeah. Yeah, we could have ported. We would. And the VMXNet 3 driver is the one that we're going to use. The other driver is like an Intel E1000, and it doesn't make sense to have that on an ARM device. A USB NIC, yeah, you can totally do that too. Yeah, the setup, Dan Mahoney, we're saying that the setup script wasn't working because I think, that's sort of what I'm seeing here. I don't know why. The network driver's installed. Did it install the, let's see. No, it didn't install the graphics driver, but the network driver should be there. Yeah, that's weird. Oh, I did that. Well, isn't that funny? Gaurav, we're going to have to take a look at that and figure out what's going on. Yeah, that is odd. Let's try this. Okay. And let's just actually try this. Let's just shut her down and bring it back up. That's the right DVD, okay. Coming back. What other? I think we got everyone's questions. I was just trying to click the thing in the... Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you read the README file inside of the folder, it has all the instructions for it. Okay. So we're back in. And we're going to go install VMware Tools. Please do this. There should be a setup exe, but there isn't, unfortunately. So we have to run this setup PowerShell script. And so we have to run PowerShell as administrator in order to have the access to do that. So go back to D, setup. Finger crossed, hope that works this time. So that's kind of weird. There we go. That seems to be progressing a little more than, yeah, so that's what I would expect it to do. Done. Huzzah. Okay, so now if we get out of here and we do device manager, we should see our network and our display adapters. So yeah, VMware SVGA 3D, huzzah. Network adapter, VMXNet 3. And you can see that there's some work that we got to do here still. No doubt. But we can now set the resolution to, I don't know, what do you think, guys? 4K? Let me make sure that we're using full resolution there. There we go. Bam. Huzzah. Windows 11, 4K on the Mac. Exciting, right? The one thing I will say too is, yeah, so, and to answer your question, Pamagia, the setup.exe is for full tools, and that'll be eventually what happens here. We only are shipping the network driver and the graphics driver, not the whole installer as well. And so we created a PowerShell script that installs those drivers manually. You could also go into Device Manager, search for driver, and find them in that location and just do it that way. That would totally work too. So, what else do we got here? Okay, well, that was a lot of what I really wanted to cover. If there's anything else anyone wants to go through, throw it in there. I'm going to futz around for some more time here. So for example, just to show y'all, because the VM memory is encrypted, the suspend and resume takes a little bit longer than I certainly like. You can see that it's, you know, kind of chunking along there versus, let's say, like Ubuntu. Here's 2204. You know, I'll probably, if I'm quick, almost. I was like, I can probably resume and suspend the Linux VM before the Windows VM actually finishes suspending. So yeah, so this is 2204, and it does not have the 3D graphics, and so the driver, like I said, is shipped in Linux 5.19, and here we have 5.15.53, which for folks who might not be able to see. We'll get that up into 4K and in 200% display scaling. And so, yeah, so when we do oh yeah. There. So we can see we're not using the 3D graphics stack, and you can recognize that with LLVM pipe here. Pardon me. Ooh, let's take this moment to share a word from our sponsor, Liquid Death. This brand is called Severed Lime. My other favorite flavor is called Chainsaw Mango, and this is water. That is all. It's just water. I highly recommend watching any of their marketing, though. It's absolutely hilarious. So there's 2204. And of course, just to run down the list here, we've got CentOS 9. Did I actually get this one installed? I don't think I finished installing that one. All right, so here's a fun one. Nix. My good pal Mitchell Hashimoto introduced me to this thing, and this is a thing, man. I'm not super familiar with like the window manager itself. It's a little, you really have to know what you're doing here. But basically, this is the entire operating system, and we can create new windows. It's all keyboard shortcut driven, and it's if you like to develop in Emacs or Vi or Vim, and you don't want like anything else distracting you, like this is a great way to do it, because there's Xrandr. There. So it doesn't automatically resize the display, but yeah, like Nix is a thing, right? So like if I exit the shell, if I want to run a command, and this will just be like a real quick fun thing. If I want to run a command, let's just do, I want to run glx info. This command doesn't exist. So what I have to do is I have to create a Nix shell. So let's do Nix shell. We're going to create glx info. And so what it did was now I'm inside of a shell that has glx info. and we're using the full, 4.3 SVGA stuff here. You can see that. But you really, so if I back out of the shell again, you can see the command's not there, right? And it's the same for pretty much every command. So Nix is a whole, it's a very unique way of how an operating system is thought of. Everything is sort of layered, and you can have multiple versions of different libraries or the same library on the same system without them conflicting. And it's a different way of doing it. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Gentoo. And if you were to take Gentoo and like the Unixy kind of way of doing it, and then like layer into that like a container oriented thinking of layers and whatnot, that's sort of what Nix ends up kind of being like. And so yeah, we worked and got that to work as well. And so we're super proud of that. But other than that, I think that's sort of the extent of what I wanted to share. Let's see if anybody if there was anything folks wanted to see when doing Windows updates or installing Microsoft Store. Does it say issue with the host? Yeah, that's a Microsoft thing. I don't think it likes the CPU type. And so we're working through that to figure out how to get around it. I haven't tested it with the latest versions. But yeah, that the Microsoft Store is going to be like that. It's the same thing. Like, I think if you try to install from the Apple App Store on a Mac OS VM, it's like, hold on, like, it wants you to authenticate and sign in and things like that. Mac file system availability. I'm not sure what you meant by that. Rocky Linux. Working on Rocky. It should be not a huge stretch for us, and it probably, if it doesn't already work, because it's all built off of Fedora, CentOS, RHEL, that same sort of line, that should just work. Like I said, I haven't tested it in a little bit of time. I think I even might have one on here where I tried. But yeah. And I mentioned that the fast TPM was a new feature that we created. Is there a reason that we didn't use the same code that the High Horizon Instant Clones uses, where they only corrupt the necessary files? It's actually the same code. It's very simple. They're very similar. That team actually helped build this for us, with us. And so yeah, we had this other project. Here, I'll switch back around. We had this other project called Managed VM. And it's currently a fling right now, but the idea was that you had these packages around that lived on the Mac or on Windows, and that there were packages within the VM, and they could all be managed by Workspace ONE and enforce policy and things like that. And obviously one of the requirements that they wanted was to be able to not have crappy performance, and so that's where we worked together on that feature. And so they developed it for their needs. We took that code and sort of made it work for our needs without having the managed VM component required there. So let's see. How big is the team working on Fusion and Workstation? I don't think I'm allowed to share that information. But what I can share is this. Our team, my team, the team that I directly manage and work with, we handle the UI on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and the plumbing that we use to go between other things. But a lot of the hypervisor stuff, that's all the same team that builds ESX. They build that with us as part of our requirements. What's cool too is the folks who are doing ESXi ARM, who got us to where we are with Fusion. The one fella on there, I just bless him, Regis. If you're watching, if you see us in the future, my man, thank you for creating Fusion. Regis back in the day saw an opportunity to be able to take workstation code and run it on a Mac. And when they switched over to Intel way back in 05, 06, whatever. And in fact, yeah, this was the very first demo that we had. And it didn't even have a name at the time. So yeah, it literally was just called Mac product or whatever. And, it became Fusion. And, over the years, Regis, he's been here since before everybody. He's years before Ragu and whatnot. And so Regis is working on ESXi ARM. And he's one of the low-level engineers there. And all that effort that we did on ESXi ARM was able to be used in how we built Fusion for Apple Silicon. Because even though Fusion for Apple Silicon is a custom chip, it feels and looks enough like an ARM chip when we get into the virtualization aspects of things that we can run ARM VMs, and that's what ESXi ARM does. So I'm very grateful that we have that expertise still at the company, still kicking. And then the same thing can be said about the other stuff too. So like there's a dedicated team that builds graphics stuff, and that is ESX as well as us. And so yeah, there's a lot of different folks working on a lot of different parts, and we build different parts at different times and sort of release them, package them up together. And it's a lot of coordinating. I will say it's a lot of coordinating and a lot of testing, and it requires a lot of expertise. So our UI team, has been really fantastic in trying to understand all these different requirements and all these different APIs and how they all work. We're talking like, all different kinds of stuff going on. And so you really have to be a polyglot to kind of grok a lot of it. And I'm really proud of, what the hosted team, what we call our hosted team, has been able to do. We call them hosted because we're actually living on top of another product. So like Windows, Mac, or Linux. So we are hosted on their host, if you will. So yeah, can I post the exact link of the Ubuntu? Yeah, just go to cdimage.ubuntu.com, and I'll bring it up again. cdimage.ubuntu.com brings you to like an FTP server like thing, looks like, directories. And so Jammy is 2204, and Impish Indri is 2210, but it hasn't been released yet, so it's just under daily. So under Jammy, we have daily live. And then in daily live, if you want to get an older specific day build, you get a build, but we always go to current. And so that takes us here. And within here, you can get that ARM64 Jammy ISO. So this is 2210. Again, sorry, 2204 Jammy. 2210 is kinetic, not impish, my bad. And so for 2210, everything that Ubuntu is working on that they haven't shipped yet, it goes under daily live. And so once they stamp this out as official release, which I think it'll be November, maybe-ish, this then becomes kinetic. And so within kinetic, it's the same thing as the Jammy. There's the kinetic desktop ARM64 ISO. And from there, we just file new and say kinetic. Bam. And there's a Jammy there too. So installing it, it's the same as, as it has been before. Let me just run you through Kineted. I will turn on 3D graphics all the way. I also like to give more CPU and RAM. Again, for Ubuntu, you only really need 8192, so 8 gigs. More CPU cores helps the installation go faster though. And for the disk, I like 100, seems to be a nice fit for me. And that's good enough. So we fire it up. I don't know if you can hear my cat complaining. We're not playing fetch, so she's very upset at me. Oh, it helps if I do. Oh my God. There. Helps if I'm actually sharing. So, ooh, fun. Must be using an older ISO. So yeah, so some of the older ISOs, if you have 3D accelerated turned on, it will crash. But you can just disable 3D support within the settings and then re-enable it once the operating system boots. Again, it's like the ISO has got an older version. This is not the newest ISO. I'm sure it's just whatever was in my cache. So you can see it should get past the installer here and get us to the desktop where we can start installing. So yeah, and for before, when I was talking and not sharing my screen, cdimage.ubuntu.com. Like I said, it looks like a file system tree. Jammy, and then daily live is where you're going to find current, is where you're going to find 2210. Or sorry, again, I keep doing that. 2204. And then 2210, and everything that they're working on that isn't released yet goes under daily live. So daily live current, you can see we've got 2210 kinetic here, and that's where the that ISO comes from. So that's kind of it, my friends. I went for a half hour longer, or a few minutes longer than I was hoping, because I totally screwed up the first part of this whole thing. But we did manage to get through it on the second run. So I wonder how this is going to work when I actually do the upload, because it should be saving it all with OBS and whatnot. But yeah, let's just click through the installer here real quick. Now this takes a little while to do it anyway, so actually we'll just shut her down. And yeah, so that's all I really had for you folks today. I will be doing more of these, I think, in the future, and we can schedule them, and I'm happy to answer any questions and go through all this stuff, because it's complicated, right? Like, you need to know a little bit about how computers work, how operating systems work, how virtual machines work. We feel it from our perspective, from a priority perspective, it's more important to have more control and to be able to do things your own way, rather than just provide a simple one-click easy button for everything, right? And so I think that there's value in that button, and I think we're gonna move forward and figure out how to make things a little easier. Like, if you don't know what an ISO is, how do you install this stuff, right? And so we want to get to that point, but at the same time, we don't want to sacrifice the control and the ability for folks who are well aware of how this stuff works to be productive and to do the things that they need to do with them. So it's always a balance that we try to strike. But what I'm grateful for is the community and all you folks who have been with us for the years. Myself, I've been driving these products since 2015, but I've been using them since 2006 or 7. And when I came to VMware in 2009, we actually ran the Fusion and Workstation support team. And so I've seen users do all kinds of amazing things with these products. Like everything from running like manufacturing assembly line stuff to, helping out with COVID, vaccine creation, to just playing games, to automotive stuff, medical stuff. There's a case where someone's got like one of our customers has Workstation running on a Linux machine on a little kiosk, like a like a wheel cart thing with a little touch screen. And they've got like a Linux machine, and it's all networked. And then they have Windows and a VM on there, and they have this 3D software that allows surgeons to see like the inside of their patients in real time. And so they have this like scan thing going on, and then once the machine scans the patient, they can use their finger and touch the screen and like in real time look at like a kneecap or something like that and like move it all around. And they do that because it's easier for the vendor to be able to manage everything when it's in a virtual machine, right? And so because we have 3D graphics, we can do fun stuff like that. And so, yeah, it gives me life when folks are using these things and when I hear the stories of the different ways they're using it. So I hope that over the next couple weeks, we don't see Twitter burn down because that's where we get a lot of interaction. At communities.vmware.com, we've got a good forum, old school forum style. But Twitter is a place where the whole world can enjoy and follow along in the conversation. And so here's hoping it doesn't burn down in the next couple weeks, given what's going on there. But by all means, find me there if you have any questions at Mike Roy Soft. I'm sure you already found there. That's how you got here in the first place. But don't be shy. Hit me up. I'm here. I am definitely going to take the next couple weeks off, though. That's going to happen. So I'll be around to answer stuff. But by all means, we're going to do Thanksgiving this weekend, and so as soon as I get out of here, I'm going to start cooking a turkey. So thanks everybody so much for joining. We're going to go ahead and end the stream, and hopefully we'll see you soon.